Beginner question: what brand of guitars is best for a beginner? I know you got some really nice guitars, some custom made ones. What do you think is best for a beginner?
So, okay, what brand of guitars are best for a beginner? I think just like all of my answers, they're probably going to be not what you expect. Maybe you're expecting me to say like, oh, Fender or Ovation or actually name some brands. And I actually just want to give you a distinction or just an insight to think about. As a beginner, it doesn't matter what brand of guitar you play. You just want to start learning how to move your fingers on the fretboard to make notes, how to strum or pick strings and how to actually make sounds. That's all we're looking for at the beginning, right? Now, that said, some guitars are harder to play than other guitars. If you're trying to play a harder guitar in the beginning, it's going to be harder for you to learn. You're going to get more frustrated, and chances are higher that you're going to put it down and want to quit or think that you can't play guitar, which is not true. It's just that the guitar probably is difficult to play. Now, other guitars are easier to play. So let me make one big distinction, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper to this question: acoustic versus electric. It is true that most acoustic guitars have thicker strings than electric guitars. Therefore, it's easier to press down the strings on an electric guitar. The neck is usually smaller as well. So getting started is probably going to be easier on an electric guitar, in my opinion, versus an acoustic guitar. If you like acoustic guitar, you want to play an acoustic guitar, no problem. You can do that. I'm just making a distinction between the two different types of guitars that one may be a little harder at first. An acoustic may be a little harder at first than an electric guitar. Now, as far as the brand goes, as I mentioned before, some guitars are harder to play than others. And I don't, as a beginning guitar player, we don't want to have to dive down the rabbit hole to think about like specs and, neck relief and taking your guitar to a luthier and all kinds of different things that can really be confusing and overwhelming when you really just want to pick it up and play. So here's what my advice would be. I wouldn't, first of all, it doesn't matter about the brand. Why? Because in the beginning, all we're trying to do is put your finger on the strings and start to move around and start to make some music with it. That's it, right? There is one thing that I would say that is if you have a choice of whether to get your first guitar or not, I would choose something that inspires you to pick it up. Why? Because whenever you see it, and you should leave your guitar out on a stand so you can see it, or somewhere that's out that you'll go pick it up more. When you see it, you'll like it. It's like, oh, it's attractive to you. So you want to go over there and pick up the guitar. Whereas if you have a guitar that maybe somebody gave you, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying if you have a guitar that maybe somebody gave you, or it's just an old guitar, or it doesn't really feel very good, or you don't really like how it looks, you're probably not going to pick it up that much, right? So the goal is to play more because you're going to get better faster when you play more and do the right things versus not picking it up. Now, when it comes to the actual brand, the reason I mentioned that some guitars are harder to play than others and talking about like guitar specs, yes, we can talk about acoustic guitars versus electric guitars. We already talked about how electric guitars, the necks are smaller, the strings are thinner, so it's just easier to maneuver, easier to press the strings down, right? But within electric guitars or within acoustic guitars, you can have some where the action or the height of the strings above the fretboard is really, really high, or it can have some other problems that make it difficult to play. Now you can't always avoid that if maybe you don't have a choice of maybe you can't just go to the store and buy a new guitar today or something like that. If you can, great. And then what I'm about to say next will help you with that. But if you can't, here's something to think about when it comes to actual brands. So there are a lot of brands of guitars. There are some guitar brands that are a lot bigger than other brands, just like shoes, like Nike and Adidas, right? They're the big shoe brands. What I would suggest is that you probably stick with the biggest brands like Fender or Gibson or the ones that have been around the longest. And the reason is because the companies are bigger and therefore they can afford to make more affordable guitars at a higher quality. So what that means is the likelihood if you go with like a Fender or a Gibson or something that is like an Epiphone, something that is a huge brand guitar, the chances are the lower in price you go with the guitars, the higher the quality is going to be because they can afford to build into that quality because they have economies of scale. So that's my answer to how should you think about brands as a beginning guitar player. Which brand should you go with? I would go with one of the bigger brands because again, chances are you're going to be able to get a higher quality instrument that's easier to play that will allow you to want to keep playing and keep progressing at a lower cost than something that's more expensive.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, we talked about in the past that you really want to get a guitar that inspires you, and I think that's a huge point.
Totally.
Hey, thanks so much for watching that video. That was just a short clip of one of our longer Q&A videos. If you're interested in watching some more of those videos, then I recommend you hit the subscribe button over here. It's really awesome. Also, we got more videos over here, so check some out if you're interested in learning more about breaking the guitar or advancing your guitar skills. Peace.